everyone that's linked through Gibson, whether it's Jared or Lizzie Hale, and lots of others, we meet up where we wouldn't have normally, Obviously, of course, in the 60s, there were a lot more hallucinogenic drugs as well. So where, everyone was getting together under the influence. I don't, if you give someone a sitar under LSD, that's the result. I don't think that happens as much anymore, but I'm sure that had a big part to play in it.
Congratulations, Richie, on the new album, on Elegant Weapons. Totally amazing. I've been listening to it nonstop, and my favorite album for this year, I think.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. It's always a bit apprehensive when you release a new record onto the world, especially when you're primarily responsible for it. You haven't got you haven't got Rob or Glenn to blame if it goes wrong as well. It's primarily you really that spearheaded it. So it's good to see it being received well and positively received. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, and I think the album is on the charts across the United States, so that's pretty good as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not you can't expect it to be a top 10 album. You know what I mean? It's like slowly. You got to build the house one brick at a time. Both with the music and building up a relationship with the listeners. That's what it's all about, really. But as you said, if it goes in at some, if it registers somewhere, that's more than we can ask for, really. That people are taking the time out and listening. They like it or they don't like it. There's so much music out there and stimulus out there at the moment. The fact that people can just take the time and listen is enough for us. Listen to us and then judge it and maybe come along with us for the ride. That's all we can ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask Richie, how easy or how difficult was it to consciously stay away from sounding like Judas Priest? This album there's a lot of memories of classic metal, as it were, but it sounds creatively fresh. And that's one of the things that appealed to me about the album. But how hard or how easy was it to stay away from sounding like Judas Priest?
I like the way you put it, memories of older material. I've never heard it said like that before, and that's exactly what I think it is. There's echoes of influences, and to be honest, the influences I think we're all proud of. And I think I wanted those influences to shine through. But as you said, I wanted it to sound like a modern album. So in terms of how hard it was to sound different to Priest, it was a priority. I think if it was a record that sounded like a Priest record, there'd be no point. That's what we do with Priest. So it was a conscious thing. But the good thing is, as I said before, when we write with Priest, me, Rob, and Glenn would get in a room and we'd bounce those ideas off of each other and we'd come up with ideas from that, So me and you would get in a room with two ideas and we'd come up with another idea, So when we do the Priest records, that's what usually happens. With this record, musically, I was solely responsible. So I didn't have those two to bounce off. So I think it was going to be slightly different anyway. It's coming from the same DNA, it's coming from the same place. The guitar riffs are coming from the same place, the same influences that they would do on a Priest record, I think. Maybe just a different branch of the tree. And then it didn't go through Rob and Glenn and me like it would do on a Priest record. So I think it was semi-conscious, but also I think it was fairly natural that it was going to take shape that way anyway, because it didn't have those other guys putting their character on it as well.
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, I think to walk that line, and it's a fine balance to be loyal to classic metal and to sound creatively fresh, which I think you guys have done in spades. But I want to ask Richie, how did the band come about? What's the story with that?
Well, initially, all the stuff was written before I assembled the band, and it was done during lockdown. So I called out some good friends of mine. Fortunately, very grateful for the fact that, some of them are legends, like Scott Travis from Judas Priest and Rex Brown are on the record, and they've been in the industry, for the last 30 odd years, with Pantera and Priest. And I promised Scott that if I ever did anything outside of Priest, I'd give him the first call on the drums, Unfortunately, he was able to do the record along with me and Ronnie Romero. So that's, really, I'm just fortunate, to call guys up that I know that I knew would be great on it. And then moving forward, when the world opened up again, and everyone was touring, Rex is now doing Pantera, Scott's doing other things. So it was, again, a case of the same thing, really. I called up Davey Rimmer on bass from Uriah Heep, who I've known for 25 years. We used to play bars and clubs and pubs together in London. So he was, not only a great choice on bass, but a great friend of mine that I could call up. And Christopher Williams from Accept. So again, it's just, who do I think would be the best for this? Initially on the record and then moving forward, it's the same thing, really. And it would be the same, I think, if anyone couldn't do it, or they had other commitments and they couldn't do it, it would be the same thing. I'd give you a call and say, whoever it would be, who is the best to fill that slot, and that's what you do in a band. That's what bands have done for ages. If someone can't do it, you get someone in who's the best to fill that slot. And it was, again, I keep saying it, but I'm just fortunate to have those guys at the end of the line that are phenomenal players and legends in some cases,
Yeah. But just to dive a little deeper with that thought, Richie, is there something specific that you look for with musicians that you want to collaborate with? More specifically with a singer like Ronnie, that are incredible voice, incredible vocalist. Is there something specific? Is there a specific quality that you look for?
I think it's hard to say. I think instinctively when a vocalist would work or not. If they've got the right voice. It might be a different voice, but they might have something that could work with it. It could be different enough to work, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's too different. I can't hear it working. With Ronnie, I was talking to a friend of mine, Damon Johnson from Thin Lizzy. He's now in Lynyrd Skynyrd. I was talking to him about a vocalist, and he mentioned Richie Blackmore's Rainbow and the vocalist that Richie had, and a light bulb went off, and it's Ronnie Romero. And as soon as he said his name, it was to me, it was a no-brainer. As you said before, the memories of the influences in the music, you can hear the same ones in Ronnie's voice. Absolutely. You can hear where he comes from stylistically, and you can hear those, the 70s, the 80s, some 90s in his voice. But he's very much a modern day singer in the rock circles, and I thought he would be perfect. Not only is he a great singer and has those influences, but he's a great front man. He carries the band a certain way. He fronts. You know what I mean? He absolutely. That's a skill. That's a skill to be able to do that in the right way. And so, luckily, again, I keep saying luckily, I've had a lot of good fortune around me. A lot of the time. Fortunately, I called him up and I spoke to him, and he was interested. And here we are today.
Yeah, yeah. So Ronnie also sang with Michael Schenker, and one of the songs on the album was a UFO cover, Lights Out. Do you have any memories with Michael Schenker? Have you played with him before? Do you have any stories to share with Michael Schenker?
Well, we played with Michael Schenker's Temple of Rock. They opened up for Priest on a UK tour. I think it was the last UK tour we did with Priest in 2015, shockingly. Which is almost 8 years ago, and Michael opened up for us, and Michael would come in just before they went on. They'd do the show and then he'd leave. So I didn't get a lot of chance to talk to Michael, but every night I was positioned behind his Marshall cabinets, and I watched Michael in the spotlight, with his flying V in the air, and it was just a masterclass in rock guitar. He's probably my favorite guitar player still alive. Obviously I'm a big Hendrix fan, stuff like that. But Schenker, I think, is God. As far as phrasing and note choice, and melody, songwriting, it's just a masterclass in rock guitar. I think I said hello to him on the last night. We all got together, Priest and Michael Schenker's band. We got together for a photo, and I said, "Hi, Michael, I'm Richie," and that was it. That was what I said to him. And then he was off into the night, which is almost, for me, it's like it strengthens the enigma somehow,
Yeah. Does your sort of love for the flying V come from Michael Schenker, watching Michael Schenker?
1000%. And I mean, it's Schenker, it's Randy Rhoads, it's James Hetfield, it's obviously KK Downing, it's Hammett, it's all those guys. But obviously, Schenker hunched over the flying V, playing those riffs and melodies and classic solos, without a doubt. The blonde hair and the flying V, it's iconic, without a doubt.
Yeah. But actually, at a more philosophical level, what have you learned about yourself through the process of this album?
That's a good question. I don't know really. I'm not a great leader, put it that way. So, obviously I've spearheaded this band and I've put it together, but it doesn't come naturally. So it's something I have to work at, you know what I mean? For better or worse. And sometimes I think we realize what we're not good at and what we can improve on, and that's great. There's lots of things like that where you find out a lot about. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 of you pulling together. In this situation, it was a bit different. You have to write all the stuff, or you have to delegate to people that are better than you. That's another thing. Like the lyrics, for example. I'm not a big lyric guy, so instead of maybe having a subpar lyrical content, I would offer it out to people to write better lyrics than I can. So it's trying to get the better, the better end product, even if it wasn't me doing it, if that makes sense. So delegating to people that are better than putting together a good team.
Yeah.
Maybe because I'm feeling that I'm not a great leader, I need other people with me to make me sound better. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is, but it's definitely a learning experience.
Yeah. It's a great team, like you said. I mean, the band sounds incredible live. I was watching some YouTube clips and things like that. Sound amazing.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, but Richie, did putting together this band have anything to do with you falling so seriously ill, and I think sort of realizing how temporary things can be? I mean, 1 minute you're playing in front of a large audience, and the next minute, literally, 20 minutes later, you're in hospital. Did that sort of hasten the process of putting together this band?
It definitely motivated me to wrap things up and get it finished. Everything was recorded before it happened. So when I recovered and I was well enough to get back in the studio chair, I called up management, I called up the producer, and I said, let's mix the record, let's master it, let's get it finished, let's get the artwork done, let's finish the record. There's a lot more to a record than just recording the tracks. You've got to master it and mix it and everything, and package it and get the record label on board and stuff like that. But it was vital to me, really, first of all, to get back on the guitar, to get back, to playing, to get this record finished and released, to get back on tour with Priest, to finish the Priest record. I think you're right in what you're saying. It gave me not a sense of urgency, but a sense of you never know what's around the corner. So if you've got stuff that you want to do, let's get it done, because it was a very real feeling, and still is. It still motivates me today. It kind of it makes you realize how short life is, and how precious it is, and how quickly it can be over without you really knowing it. So it was important to get it finished, and inspired me to get all that stuff done, get out on the road, and get, I'm still doing it. We're still in the mixing process of the Priest record. We're getting that done and getting that ready to be put out onto the world, because it drives me. It's almost like a medicine. The guitar and music is part of the healing process, and as long as I'm doing that, as long as I've got my family, then I'll be okay.
Yeah, but I think even there, it's a question of balance, right? Do you think there's sometimes the danger of wanting to do too much, because there's, like you said,
I think you're right, and I have that battle.
Yourself.
I have that battle all the time. The balance between the two. I consider myself fairly lucky that I can live with music at the moment, and I know it won't always be like that. It wasn't like that, a couple of years ago. Everyone's touring life was cut short, and we didn't know when it was going to reopen. It is, for me, it works. It's busy. I like it that way, and as I said, it gives me focus, and it's almost like a healing quality. But at the same time, sometimes the life-work balance is a bit the other way. But I think that's just a consequence of, I'm fortunate to be in that position. Judas Priest are putting out new music. I'm putting out new music with my band, and it consumes everything, and it should. Priest is something I've dedicated my life to, and these things aren't going to be around forever. So while I'm relatively fit and healthy, why not dedicate my time to them?
Absolutely. Richie, a little bit about songwriting. You touched upon it briefly. You said you don't really like to write lyrics. Is the guitar your primary conduit to songwriting?
Absolutely, yeah. I always start with I sit down with the guitar. I'm always sitting down, strumming or playing UFO covers or whatever. And, something will jump out, like a little riff will jump out or a melody will jump out. And that's where it comes from. The guitar is like a conduit for those influences that we talked about, and it pulls them out, and I'll, record the idea. And, the guitar, the riff will inspire melodies and stuff like that, which will in turn inspire a lyrical phrase, for sure. And I'll give that to someone, and that might inspire a lyric, but as far as the lyric, all the words to the verses and stuff like that, it's not my thing. But I can definitely get lyrics from melodies. I can pull out, when you hear a melody and you can hear a phrase around that melody, it just lends itself to it. But ultimately, it's the guitar that pulls out the interest from me. And I think you can, if you go to a non-English speaking country, for example, I think people will latch onto the music and the melody maybe before they understand what the person's saying. It's the melody and the music. So that to me is what drives me and what turns me on musically more than the lyrics.
Mm-hmm. So when you go into when you're working with a producer, do you have a concrete idea of what you want things to sound like? Have you sort of visualized a final product, or are you just looking for general direction when you're working with the producer?
I think to some degree you've got an idea in your mind of what you think you want and what direction you want to go in. Albums sometimes have a way of changing through that process, and they become their own animal. Especially, even with Judas Priest, Priests have got such a strong character, but yet each album has become its own monster as it's gone through the process. There's no Priest album that sounds the same, so, and especially if you're doing your own, like a record like this, mm-hmm. There's no blueprint for it. So it could be anything. So as you go through the process, there's little things that you think, oh, let's try this and let's try that. The creative palette is totally open, really. But I think you have to have a starting point and a direction at least to aim for. And then along the way, you kind of go where the album takes you. And I'm up for that as well. You know, I'm up for kind of going wherever, if there's a good idea along the way, why not take that route, you know? So it's a bit of both, really.
Yeah. You know, I was watching some YouTube clips and I saw you jamming with Jared James and a bunch of others, I think with Zakk Myers and things like that. How much has moving to Nashville influenced your writing? Because they say that Nashville is like the Silicon Valley of music, I think. So how much has moving to Nashville influenced your writing?
Well, I think there's a lot of music and industry in Nashville. As far as writing, it's still kind of the same, really. I haven't really written with a lot of other people. I actually wrote, me and Jared actually wrote a song, you know, just for fun here at the studio, and it's a more kind of rock bluesy track. I think the way it influences it for me is there's more opportunity to write with more people. There's more people around, you know, in that sense. But I don't think it changes the way that I write as much. You know, I'm fairly set in my ways. When it, you know, I write, you know, I like Sabbath riffs and, you know, Maiden stuff, and you know, I come from where I come from, and I think, you know, having people like Jared down the road, it presents the opportunity easier to come around, have a couple of beers, and let's write a song. You know, for sure. And then we both bring what we bring to the table. But I don't think stylistically it changes me too much. You know, there's a lot of rockers out here now. There's a lot of rockers that have moved to Nashville, rock and metal people, for sure.
Yeah, because I remember reading a story about Brian Jones gifting Jimi Hendrix, I think, a copy of one of Ravi Shankar's albums. And it struck me that there was a certain creative energy in the 60s. So I was wondering if Nashville had that sort of creative energy where, like you're saying, you get to meet all these guys and hang out and, you know, just put together ideas and things like that.
I think it definitely helps. Obviously, Gibson's here as well. Gibson here, you know, I feel like I'm a big part of the Gibson family. Gibson's a creative family. We're all friends. And so everyone that's linked through Gibson, whether it's Jared or Lizzie Hale, you know, and lots of others, we meet up where we wouldn't have normally, you know. Obviously, of course, in the 60s, there were a lot more hallucinogenic drugs as well. So where, you know, everyone was getting together under, you know, under the influence. I don't, you know, if you give someone a sitar under LSD, that's the result. I don't think that happens as much anymore, but I'm sure that had a big part to play in it.
Correct. What have some of your live shows been like? You were out at Hellfest. What did it feel like to have the crowd? I'm sure they were singing some of the songs on the album and things like that. What was that like?
Yeah, we were really surprised, really. I mean, I think when we set out, first of all, we didn't know how it was going to be received. And we didn't know what the reaction was going to be, for sure. But we were surprised to see some people. Obviously, we had our own shows as well, and more people were there to see us, and they knew the songs. But when you play a festival like Hellfest, as you mentioned,
yeah,
even with Priest, they're not all your audience. They're there to see other bands. So we were just lucky to have people there, again, taking the time to maybe watch us. But even some of them were singing the songs as well, which was really, really nice to see. And I think what Ronnie observed was that even if you could tell people didn't know the songs, but they could understand them, they kind of got into them because of the riffs and the melodies. You could see that they were nodding their heads and they were into them, even though they maybe didn't know them, which was that's all we can ask for, man. Hopefully they can stick around. Hopefully they like it, and hopefully, as I said before, they join us for the journey moving forward.
Yeah, without doubt. I also saw, I think it was a show in Berlin. I saw Zakk Wylde sort of playing roadie / guitar tech for you.
Yeah, Zakk's been a good friend for a few years, and he loves. I mean, we know Zakk. Zakk loves guitar. He loves guitar players. And when we go out with Priest, we've been out with Black Label Society a few times, and Zakk's always on the side of the stage. When you turn around, there he is, because he loves to watch. He loves to be a part of it. So that was genuine. I mean, Zakk had been coming up a few times during the Pantera shows. But that was genuine. I turned around and there he was. That was the first time I saw him that night, and he had a guitar, and he just loves it. And it's a pleasure having him there, and it means a lot to have someone like Zakk, who's a big influence of mine. Up there giving his almost like his endorsement. So it's an honor.
Yeah, I noticed that you guys had played. I think you did some covers. You did Judas Priest. You did Black Sabbath as well. Do you have any favorite Judas Priest songs that you'd like to play live?
There's a couple that we haven't played with Priest, and we've maybe tried in rehearsals, but for one reason or another, we never got around to. One of them was "Reckless" from the Turbo record, which I think is a fantastic song.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, we never played it live. We did it in rehearsal, as I said. I'd like to play that one. I'd like to play "Ram It Down." So yeah, they're definitely a couple. Maybe some of the stuff from Rock and Roller, like "Winter" or "Cheetah" or something like that. Something different. Something and also, so I was listening to Firepower the other day. There's some stuff that I forgot. There's stuff like "Children of the Sun," "Lone Wolf," and stuff like that, which kind of gets forgotten. But there's some great stuff on there,
Yeah. Talking about collaborations, I wanted to ask what it was like working with Christopher Lee from Dracula and Lord of the Rings and stuff.
I mean, I said earlier on, I've been fortunate to be, surrounded with some great people and some great circumstances, but he was one of them. His people that he worked with were great. He was fantastic. He was, you can imagine, he's from a different generation, so he's got a different way of thinking about things, and it was a real pleasure to listen to him, and his input about current events and stuff like that. And it's just inspiring for a man of his age to be making music like that. And it was connected to him. He was the descendant of King Charlemagne, so it was connected to him in the story, and he was performing it and narrating and singing where he could, and it was great to be a part of it. Really, it was pretty surreal to be part of a heavy metal album with Christopher Lee.
Yeah,
at that point of his career, Star Wars and Dracula, and he's been in the war, and he's had such a big life. So it was just great to be, next to him, listening to the man talk. Really.
Yeah, I remember reading. I think it was in an interview where he said that he discovered heavy metal through Black Sabbath. I think it was in the 70s, and he sort of listened to Sabbath.
Well, I think I did too. To be honest, it wasn't in the 70s, but I definitely discovered what I know as heavy metal through Black Sabbath. I mean, what more can you say?
Yeah, and especially on this album, I was listening to it just before we went on, and there's just so many times I can think Tony Iommi and Black Sabbath, right? It just
definitely. There's one of the songs on there. It slips my mind which one at the moment. I think it's "Horns for a Halo." When you're putting down ideas initially, you save them. song number one, or you saved them as a name. And I think it was Horns for a Halo. I saved it as Iommi because I thought this is something that gives me like an Iommi vibe. You know what I mean? And then again, I'm not going to hide those influences. It's obvious where they come from, so why not be proud of it? But it just struck me as like an Iommi, Birmingham, Sabbath type vibe, and that's what I saved it as. So it's unmistakable. I think in some of those riffs.
Yeah. There's something else I wanted to touch upon, Richie. I was going through your website, and I noticed that proceeds, I think, from the sale of T-shirts on your website, and I think there was a Gibson line as well. You're supporting 2 charities to do with heart health. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, exactly. It's there's some T-shirts on there, and we've just released a guitar via the Gibson Custom Shop. So all my proceeds, everything that I would get from that from those sales go towards 2 charities, and one of them is the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health, which is not the heart, it's the plumbing around it, which actually was specific to me. So it wasn't my heart, it was all the aorta and everything like that ruptured. And then the other charity is the American Heart Association, which is much more general heart health. So they're 2 charities, obviously, that are close to my heart, no pun intended. And I just thought it was a way to give back, and raise awareness because of what happened to me through the sale of a guitar. So to me, that's perfect. That's giving back through something. People can play the guitar, they can create music and give back to those charities and raise awareness as well. So to me, it was fundamental that I did that, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a fabulous gesture. But Richie, talking about giving back, I've been on a couple of your Instagram lives, and you seem to be doing it for like hours on end. Either breaking down songs or taking requests from people and stuff. How important is teaching for you, and how important is it to give back, so to speak?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not a very good teacher. Teaching, I think, is a skill. Aside from the technical side of the guitar, I think people learn how to teach, and I've never learned how to teach. But I think during the pandemic there was no live music, so I was trying to create a way of interacting with people and playing, creating that dynamic where. Because that's where it comes from, playing in the bars and the pubs in London. That's what it's all about. People want Mustang Sally, and you play Mustang Sally. And it was about creating that dynamic for me as well. I enjoyed that interaction. I enjoy playing, and hopefully people enjoy that interaction and hearing me play as well. So it was like a two-way thing. So that was what it was, really. I've been a bit busy since the lockdowns lifted, so I haven't done much of it, but hopefully I'll be able to get back to it one day. I enjoyed it. But yeah, I used to do it. I used to have a couple of drinks and sit here for hours doing it. It was great fun. I love doing that stuff. It's music I love, interacting with people. I like that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking of Mustang Sally, you were in a cover band with Dave Rimmer, your Camden Town days. I think it was called Metal Works. How is it? It's not easy to be in a cover band. It's not easy to do covers, is it?
Some people were geared towards it. Some people are not. Some people find it. I've met people that they find it hard to get their head around that kind of experience. They find it easier to write their own stuff and come up with their own stuff. For me, it was just a necessary thing, really, to play live. If I wanted to play live regularly, I had to learn these songs. And since I was about 12, I'd been doing that anyway. You'd learn a few songs that you knew, play a couple live with the band, and then that repertoire grew into like 5 songs, 10 songs. You do one set, maybe you do 2 sets, and then you kind of became part of the band. So that was part of my life really since I was 13 years old. So
yeah,
it was a natural thing.
Yeah, but can you look back and say this is what sort of being in a cover band taught me specifically?
It taught me so much. Like, it taught me not only the playing, obviously the playing night after night after night live is a big deal. You get one shot. There's people in the audience. You get one shot at playing that part. So you do that night after night after night. Your playing becomes obviously elevated. You can improvise because you're used to playing. You know, obviously where everything is a lot more intimately. But then there's also stuff like sound. You get to learn about your sound, your role in in a band. You learn about listening to others, communicating in a band, all that stuff that I think gets taken for granted. You know, there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of listening, there's a lot of delegating, there's a lot of, you know, stepping back and letting someone else do their bit, and then, you know, being on time, you know, fixing your gear, what gear works for you throughout the years, you know, fine-tuning stuff. It's a lot that you learn throughout the years, aside from just playing, I think. So I think it was fundamental in my education, and why I might have been ready when I got that call, when I got that opportunity. I felt like I had a shot at the opportunity, you know, because I felt like I was ready. I felt like I was on top of my game, and so I went for it. With you know, I grabbed the bull by the horns, you know, and went for it. So,
are you formally trained, Richie? Did you study?
Whatever the opposite of formally trained is, that's me. It's records and listening to records and trying to copy the records. Like, sometimes, you know, you pick up the needle and put it back and find the note and then put the needle back. You know, that's as I did take piano lessons for about 3 weeks, but there was an electric guitar and a drum kit in the corner, and that's what I wanted to play. You know, so it really, I was playing the piano. I was playing like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and in the corner was what I really wanted to play. So it kind of what I wanted to play. So no formal training at all, just, you know, the basic chords, and then I went from there.
Yeah. Have you felt any pressure over the years to study music?
Not really. I'm not really that way inclined, and I think you build up your own systems and your own patterns when you learn by ear.
Yeah.
And I think maybe learning theory now would maybe slow that down a little bit. It's easier for me to listen to something and play it rather than look at it on the page. It'll probably take me longer to do that than listen to it, you know.
Yeah, because I've spoken to people who have said that it might impede them creatively if they sort of study in structure and things like that. They feel that.
Yeah, again, I think some people are geared towards that way of learning, and other people are not. So I think it depends on the person, for sure.
What are your plans with the band, Richie, with regard to touring? Is Asia on the cards at all? With both Judas?
We're looking at it. I mean, obviously, as you said before, we've been over that way with Priest before. With Elegant Weapons, we're looking at all opportunities. You know, we just got back from Europe, and we're looking at stuff beyond. We're looking at the US, Japan, Asia, maybe South America. We're looking at all opportunities, wherever we can take the music and hopefully snag some new fans. So if we do get those opportunities, we'll let you guys know on the socials and keep you updated.
Yeah, that'll be fabulous. Richie, lastly, before I let you go, if you had to pick your top 5 albums of all time, what would it be?
UFO, Strangers in the Night, Metallica, Master of Puppets, Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time, Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland, Judas Priest, Defenders of the Faith, and Martyrs of Reality, Black Sabbath for the bonus.
Yeah, fabulous. I mean, I could listen to that every day, all the time, man.
Yeah, there you go. What else is there?
Yeah, but Richie, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I wish you well. All the best.
Thank you, Vikram. It's a pleasure. Hopefully see you over where you are soon.
Yes, absolutely, Richie. Take care.